everyone. Welcome back to this week's episode of Coping Together. I'm your host, Faith, with the Mental Health Association of Central Florida, here to talk to you about all things related to mental health, COVID-19, and how we're all going to get through this journey together. And I'm very excited. I know that we recently had Jill Cohen on from Lifeboat Project, and we talked about human trafficking. We talked about what it is and kind of the unspoken pandemic and how the current global pandemic has influenced and impacted human trafficking. And today, what I really want to talk about is focus on like the mental health aspect and what it means to be truly trauma informed, which is something that you needs to be considered when talking with someone who has dealt with human trafficking. And so with that, I'm actually very excited to welcome Caitlin Weiss from the Lifeboat Project. Caitlin, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And I do appreciate you coming in and talking with us. I wanted to, I guess, before we get started, if you could explain your journey with Lifeboat Project, explain how you got started and kind of what you do for the agency, I would really appreciate that.
Yeah, so I currently work as a therapist with the Lifeboat Project and also a few other roles there. I started volunteering with them when I was still in grad school for my master's in mental health counseling. And the journey of finding that nonprofit, I went through a lot of different sites and kept looking for places that were working directly with survivors and found a Lifeboat Project. They came highly recommended. And as I got to know Jill and then the program director, Millie, I was able to see how they interacted with survivors on a daily basis and the fact that survivors were actually being helped. And I was able to see through that whole year of volunteering, okay, what does this process look like? Is it legitimate? How do the survivors feel about living here? And just seeing the life-changing things that were happening and the fact that it was trauma-informed, I was like, okay, this is somewhere I want to work. This is somewhere that I want to be involved in. And so upon 2 months before graduation, Jill offered me the job as a case manager. So that way, as I was starting off in a private practice, getting clients for my internship site, which you understand all about that, I was able to also be a case manager there and really be able to work side by side with them and learn more about the world of human trafficking. There's a lot more that is not really talked about, whether it be in podcasts or teachings, and there's more than what we even see in the media. And so being able to work with the survivors every single day and then actually living on site in one of the transitional houses has been life-changing because I've been able to see how this trauma impacts them on that daily level. So currently now I'm a therapist at Phoenix Counseling here in Orlando. And then we partner with Lifeboat Project where I'm able to see some of the survivors as clients also. Now I'm not their official therapist, which is actually really cool to see that transition that's happened the past couple of years.
That sounds amazing. And I appreciate you sharing that with us. I think that you definitely sought out and had an in-depth experience in trying to be, I think, as informed as you possibly could. And I think that that's probably a really good transition into what is kind of the importance of being trauma informed and what does it really mean to be trauma informed?
Yeah, I feel like that word's thrown around a lot lately, especially with service providers and especially in the human trafficking field. There's this movement now towards wanting to be trauma informed as a staff, whether you work for the Lifeboat Project or wherever you're working. But what we've seen a lot is that there's a great knowledge of what the trauma looks like and what the trauma might be. Like they can recite what human trafficking looks like. And even as therapists, there's a lot of therapists that can recite, this is what DV violence looks like. This is what a sexual assault violence looks like. But there's a lack of understanding of what trauma informed actually means. And what I've seen the past couple of years is that it looks like actually understanding how that trauma impacts them and then making changes as service providers based upon that. So for instance, for someone that's been through trafficking, we can use that as an example, or really any abusive relationship. When someone has been through that, relationships become something that's not considered safe. So when we're at Lifeboat and we have our safe house and we're having new survivors come in to find hopefully a safe place to begin healing for them, we have to understand by being trauma informed, okay, relationships have never been safe for this individual. They're probably not going to start off trusting us right away. That wouldn't make sense for their survival if they did. So we need to make sure that we're very calm, we're very consistent, we're very caring, to where when they interact with us, they know what to expect. And the same thing, that's what we have to do as therapists. Being that trauma informed, understanding that when someone's coming in for therapy, there's probably a pretty good chance relationships haven't been safe for them. So it's understanding, yes, that there's been bad relationships and that's been the trauma itself. But now that trauma has changed the way they might view future relationships. And if I represent that future relationship, I'm not going to be considered safe. So then how do I be informed and how do I treat them? It's by responding. Instead of reacting, it's understanding that, hey, I need to be calm, I need to be consistent, I need to be authentic, but then I also need to be doing my own work. And that's something we really push both at Phoenix Counseling and at Lifeboat, is that the staff needs to be involved in either support groups, group therapy, or their own individual personal therapy that is trauma informed, where they're able to process what's been going on throughout the week or throughout maybe past experiences in their own life.
So it sounds a lot like it's kind of trying to get the complete full picture, that a lot of times I think we get a glimpse, or it's almost like opening a book and, reading the first chapter and being like, okay, cool, I know what I'm doing now, I know what I'm talking about, which maybe you know to a certain extent, but you won't know everything until you finish the book.
Yeah, that would be a great way of describing it.
Cool. I'm proud of that analogy.
No, that was good.
I just came up with it on the fly.
No, that was great, because I was about to say, even building on that. So if we're talking again about the human trafficking world and what that looks like as a shelter provider or as a service provider, it's also about having individualized plans for each survivor. Because if you have survivors come in to, let's say, a safe house, and you have like a kind of a cookie cutter format of what they need to go through in order to heal, they may not, again, every survivor is going to be different. And human trafficking does not have just one way that it looks or one definition. There are so many different ways that the trafficking might play out, whether it's labor trafficking or sex trafficking. And so it's understanding that survivor's story. But in order to do that, you actually have to sit down with them and listen and not assume that you know everything, and be like, hey, please share, like, teach us, like, share with us, understanding their story, and then using that story to then inform, how do we want to make this goal? So when we have survivors that work with us, we don't ask them for all the details on their life. We listen to whatever they would like to share with us. And we use that to then work together to create goals, to create some sort of either treatment plan for more of a therapy basis, or for case management, it would be more of an individualized service plan. So do they want to go back to school? Do they want to get into work? What goals do they have? Instead of making it just a cookie cutter, here's what we expect from you, you're going to do the following things or else you can't live here. It's like, no, what do you need? How can we help you? How can we come alongside and support you? Because you are the only one that truly knows your story.
I think that sounds like a very kind of empowering experience, if I may say so, for someone who probably hasn't ever had or has had very little experience like that in their life. Yeah. So I think it's wonderful that you all set that goal and you work, like you said, you work with the client, because it's their story and everyone is unique. And that's, again, I think an important thing to stress to any client, but especially I think to clients who have undergone and experienced something like human trafficking. Mm-hmm. And so I think that is, you kind of already touched on this, but I just want to see if you have anything more to add. But in being aware now of what it means to be trauma informed or to have a better idea about it, what does that look like in the context of mental health in survivors of human trafficking?
Yeah, so actually touching on the trauma that's there, or actually, can we repeat that question? Because I was thinking about my coffee. 1 second, please.
I do not judge you whatsoever. I love coffee. I think we all need coffee.
So yeah, I did already touch on it.
Especially as we get just through the week. Okay,
yes. Perfect. Go for it.
Perfect. Okay. So do you want me to just move on to the next question?
Yes. No, just repeat that question, please.
I'll repeat. Yeah. No problem. So now that we've talked about being trauma informed, and I think you've already, Lisa, touched on this a little bit, but what does that look like in the context of human trafficking and survivors and mental health?
Yeah, so we use Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I use this a lot, especially when seeing them as clients as a therapist. It's actually looking, okay, what are the basic needs that need to be met right now? If there is a lack of food, if there is a lack of safe housing, if there's a lack of water, if there is a lack of sleep, we can't really expect these major goals being met, like going back to work or going into school or be getting really in-depth trauma-informed therapy until those base needs are met. So it's really starting at that baseline. And that's one thing I respected about Lifeboat was that they use a housing first model, which means the focus is getting them housed first, helping them find a safe place to sleep. We even have an emergency shelter that's dedicated simply to that. So survivors can come in, there's no detox required, and they can actually stay 24 hours up to 7 days. So this
Wow.
is great in that they can come in, again, have that safe place to sleep, even if it's just overnight. And let's say they're able to get out and they come and it's 10 p.m. We can give them a clean bed. They can take a hot shower. They can get a hot meal, some new clothes. And then in the morning, we can make a game plan. If it's they need detox, great. Let's get them into a detox center. And let's say maybe they're traffickers here in Central Florida and doing a detox center here wouldn't be safe. Okay, then let's coordinate with a detox center that's maybe a couple hours away or in a different state. Find safe transportation there, whether it's one of us taking them or coordinating with a service provider in a different state. Let's get them into that detox center. And then again, still following up with them, still maintaining that consistency and that support. But having that emergency shelter gives us that opportunity to really, again, have an individualized plan with that survivor, rather than saying, in order for you to come here, you have to have gone through this many days of detox, or you can't have used these drugs. Saying, hey, we understand at least the baseline that in many times trafficking, there is forced drug use. So we don't want to not give you a safe bed to sleep in overnight because you've been forced on a certain drug. So let's give you that safe place to sleep. Again, that housing first model, water, food, sleep, new clothes, and they're able to have a safe little place for a little bit. Let's make a game plan from there with the survivor, not telling them this is what you need to go do, but working with them on this and move from there.
It really does sound like the biggest thing is to first make sure. I mean, like you said, it's the basic human needs. It's food, water, and shelter. Having that safety, and then you can focus on like the mental health aspect of it. Because I think that you make a really great point, and also in that for this person having a safe haven probably does have an impact on their mental health. It's something that might be unfamiliar to them. Maybe if not for a long time, but maybe if ever, have they ever had anything like that? And so I really do appreciate you kind of giving us some insight on that. And I think that my last question for you is if you can give us an idea on, like, I guess we've talked a little bit about the impact of such a trauma on that survivor's mental health, but I'm wondering if you could give us an idea of what that healing process looks like. Like you said, first it's getting the shelter, the food, the water, and then you said, then we'll make a game plan, or then get started. So what does that healing process generally look like?
So it's a couple different segments. I think one, there's a major area of empowerment that needs to happen. And that's something that Lifeboat definitely strives to do. We have survivors that are on staff, and we also have survivors that helped us make the actual program for our safe house. So instead of telling them again, this is what we expect you guys to do, it was incorporating a lot of our survivor advocates, them having a seat at the table weekly to give us their feedback and to let us know from either labor trafficking perspective, sex trafficking perspective, male and female. What do you guys see that needs to be changed? What do you like? What is not working? And what do we need to change as service providers? That way they have their voice. I would say a major area of healing, yes, there are the obtrusive memories that need to be dealt with, and those very intrusive ones, whether it be flashbacks or night terrors. But there's also the healing from how the trauma, again, has impacted them on that daily level. So whether that be how they attach to people, any addictive cycle that might be there, whatever that looks like. Because with human trafficking, you have both covert trauma and you have overt trauma. So the overt trauma would be more of the daily events that happened while they were being trafficked. But the covert could be the way that they were looked at by the trafficker over and over. It could be the way that comments were made against the other people that were being trafficked to kind of send subliminal messages to them as to, this is how you're expected to behave, or this is what we need from you. The covert trauma, unfortunately, could even come from other service providers, of ways that they were looked at, or ways that they were treated, or ways that they were talked to. And now that has actually intensified the trauma. a lot of times when you're talking to a survivor of human trafficking, again, they're a survivor for a reason. They're resilient, and they are some of the strongest people that I know. I remember I actually got really bad tonsillitis a couple months ago. And this just shows like how amazing these survivors are. So one of the survivors that live in the transitional house, one that made me tea, and the other one went out and got all the supplies for like chicken noodle soup and literally handmade, like fresh chicken, fresh vegetables, cooked everything. But that is their character and that is who they are. They're some of the most generous, kind, strong people because they survived for a reason. But many times from that trafficking, from all that covert and overt trauma, it's almost like a sense of their humanity has been taken away from them. They've been treated like they're a commodity. They've been told that they're an object. And many times they've been sold like that as well, whether it be by family, by someone that they loved and trusted, whether it be by a mentor, or whether it be by someone that they met on the street, wherever it was. They've been told and treated like they are an object. So part of that healing process is actually changing now how they view themselves, where it's like, you're not an object. You're actually an amazing human being who has so much worth and is so vital and has so much to give and so much that he or she deserves. And so I think that's some of the hardest part is really changing that core sense of identity from what that, again, understanding that trauma informed part, not just the events that happened while they were being trafficked, but now how has that trafficking impacted how they view themselves, how they view daily life, and all those little things.
I can absolutely see the passion when you talk about it. And I think that I really appreciate you kind of, again, giving us this insight into not just what is human trafficking. And I loved having Jill here and we talked about that, but taking it a step further. And it's not just, what is it, but what is the impact it has on the survivors? And then what does that healing process look like? Sorry, that was my phone. But really that is, I just really appreciate you coming in or virtually coming in and sharing this with all of us because, here on Coping Together, we are here to talk about these topics that we may not know a lot about, that we ourselves may not know, the general public may not know. And so I really appreciate you coming in and, giving us just this little bit more of information. And I'm excited to say that we'll continue and end our series actually hearing the story of a survivor who is also affiliated with the Lifeboat Project. So be sure to tune into that episode in a couple weeks. But Caitlin, I really appreciate you being here. To all of you at home or work, wherever you are, thank you so much for watching. I know this episode was a lot of information. Maybe, you felt something, you felt uncomfortable, or it's maybe brought up some bad memories for you. If there's anything like that, if you feel uncomfortable in any sense, please feel free to reach out to us at the Mental Health Association of Central Florida. We would love to help you get connected with any kind of resource, whether it's counseling or maybe you would benefit or qualify for services from Lifeboat Project. But whatever it is, please reach out to us. It's okay to get help. That's something that we stress. That's clearly something that Caitlin and Lifeboat Project stresses. And just thank you all so much for watching. If you have any topics you want to see, please reach out to us as well. And I will include the information for Lifeboat Project in the comments below. So thank you again so much. Thank you, Caitlin, and I will see you all next time.